One of the features that I've been looking forward since the introduction of signals in Angular has been signal forms. We have seen some workarounds around this to make signals compatible with forms, but it was always a lot of work and involved a lot of boilerplate, and nothing was very consistent. This week, Angular introduced signal forms, and they are game changer, and I've been looking forward for this feature for a very long time. And the good thing is we have had a preview of this for a few months now. It's just that now it's available on a major version of Angular, and you can start using it internally. So for this simple recording, I just wanted to create a very simple form. In this case, we're building a login form. As you can see, we have the types defined here, or just like a normal signal. We have an email and a password, and then we create a normal signal. We are calling this form data, and then we pass in the type and the the initial values of our signal. And then this is where now the signal forms come, the signal form comes in, whereby we now define a login form here, and then call this form function, which we import from the signals package above. So this is where it's imported, and this is where we pass in our signal, which is our model. So this needs to be a writable signal. And then we have an option to do validation. So in this case, we have a schema path, which is basically like our mirrors, our signal or object here. So in this case, to have like .email, .password fields. And then the first thing we are going to say is that required. We want to say that our password is required. So in this case, if the password isn't there, then we return the message password is required, and the required function is also imported above there on the signal form. And then for the same thing for email required, we want that to be required. And then we have a special function for validating email addresses. So in this case, this is going to check if it's a valid email address, and then return the following message. And then lastly, we can do some pattern validation. So in this case, I just want my password to have some to be at least 8 characters and at least one number and one letter. Other than that, everything else should be fine. And now that I have this now login form in here, I can then now go to the template. So this is just a very basic example. And as you can see, we have a normal form with a submission. I think this should be some submit here. That should be submit with a single quote here. And then we're calling the on submit function. And then we are defining like an input here. So in this case, this is an input. And now we have this field directive, which we import from the signal form as well in here. So this is where we import it, and we add it to our standalone component. And then we basically map this field to that, and that's the only thing we need to do. Now we have two-way binding, and the data we type in here is going to be reflected into our form state with all the validation and state management that comes with the form. As you can see, we are showing errors just below here. So as you can see, we have a validation. So in this case, we are checking whether our email control is valid, or in this case invalid, and whether it has been touched. So in this case, we don't want to show an error message when that forms loads up. Once we have that, then we can now loop over our errors and then show the error message. This is a very simple approach to this. You could do a little bit more work just to make this pretty and nice, but this for now does the trick. And that's the only thing we need to do for state management in this case. We could do some like validation to, let's say, we could say something like class dot I don't know, border, that's not how you type border led 600, like that. So in this case, now it's going to have like a border of led 600 allowed it when it's invalid or something like that. And we're accessing all this within our form, our state, and we can do clever things like that. And then we can repeat the same thing with this. So as you can see here, we have like the password field, we have the field in here, and then we pass in this one here, the validation. Similar to the email, we can do special things if it's a different kind of field. And then now here we can now access our form value. So we could basically do something like form data, this is a signal JSON just for simplicity purposes, but then we need to come in here and import the JSON pipe, which is fine. That should fix our error, and that works. In this case, I had created a special function, a special computed value, which basically formats it in a nice way for JSONs, but that's just my OCD in there getting in the way. And then finally, we can now have a button that's going to submit. It's of type submit, and then we can disable the form if it's invalid. And now when we call this function of submit here, so let's have a look at that. Now we can say check if the form is valid or invalid in case something calls it before validation. Then if that we can submit, we can access the form value like this. So in this case, we're going to access the values directly from the form state, or we can access it through our signal like this. And that's a very quick look for our signal forms. That's about like 10 minutes of a quick look at this, but it's just amazing. I mean, just amazing how stable this feature is and what you can do with this feature. I think I'm going to do a write-up for this, and then in the future I'm going to look at how can we now use JSON schema, something like a ZOD, for validation of login forms. And that's it from my side. Thank you for bearing with me or listening to my rant. And until next time, bye.